Have you ever felt trapped in your own thoughts? Like your mind keeps replaying the same worries, fears, and doubts over and over again, and you just can't seem to escape? Why does it feel so hard to let go of the past or stop worrying about the future? Have you ever wondered if there's a way to break free from this cycle? Imagine this. You're sitting in a quiet room, but your mind is far from peaceful. Thoughts rush in like waves. Things you could have done differently, things you need to do tomorrow, things you're afraid might happen. It's exhausting, isn't it? And yet, this is the reality so many of us face daily. Why does it feel like we're prisoners of our own minds? Here's a simple example. Think about a time when someone said something hurtful to you. Days, maybe even years later, you might still replay that moment in your head. You feel the sting of those words as if they were said just yesterday. The event is over, but your mind keeps it alive. Why do we let that happen? Welcome to Wisdom Woven. On this channel, we explore profound insights to help you unlock the true potential of your mind and life. But before we dive deeper, we need your help. Did you know that there are so many views on this channel, yet only 0.2% of you subscribe? Let's change that right now. If you find value in this content, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more transformative knowledge to people just like you. Now, let's talk about why our minds behave this way and how Buddhist philosophy can help us break free. Buddhism teaches that much of our suffering comes from our attachment to thoughts, emotions, and desires. When we don't understand how the mind works, we become stuck in a loop of wanting, fearing, and regretting. But what if I told you that freedom isn't as far away as it seems? In this video, we'll uncover how the teachings of mindfulness, awareness, and self-compassion can help you break free from the mental traps you didn't even realize were holding you back. It's not about fighting your thoughts, but learning to observe and understand them. The path to inner peace begins with awareness, and it's simpler than you think. Stay with us to find out how. Understanding the illusion, the Buddhist view of the mind. Imagine walking through a dense fog. Everything around you is blurry, and you can't see clearly. You might feel confused, unsure of your surroundings, and maybe even a little scared. Now, picture this fog as your mind. All the thoughts, feelings, and perceptions that swirl around in your head are like that mist, clouding your vision and making it difficult to see the truth clearly. This is how Buddhism views the mind, as a space filled with illusions, distractions, and attachments that prevent us from seeing things as they really are. In Buddhism, the mind is often compared to a monkey jumping from branch to branch, never resting, always seeking something new. This monkey mind is constantly moving, grasping, and running after pleasure, avoiding pain, and getting stuck in old habits and patterns. The mind can become a trap because it tricks us into believing that what we see and feel is the ultimate truth, when in reality, it's just a temporary illusion. When we talk about illusions, we're not saying that everything is fake. Instead, it means that our perceptions, our thoughts, and our emotions are not fixed or permanent. They come and go, like clouds in the sky, and are constantly changing. What we think is real today may not be the same tomorrow. This is the nature of the mind, constantly shifting, creating stories, and attaching meaning to things that are fleeting and impermanent. So, how does this illusion affect us in everyday life? We've all experienced moments where we get stuck in our thoughts, replaying a conversation, or worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet. This is the trap. The mind gets caught in its own illusions and makes us believe that these thoughts define who we are, or that they are real, when in fact, they are simply passing mental states. Buddhism teaches that by recognizing the impermanence of these thoughts and emotions, we can begin to free ourselves from their grip. To understand this more deeply, let's look at the Buddhist concept of Maya, which refers to the illusion or the false reality we live in. Maya is what makes us believe that our perceptions, our experiences, and the world around us are solid, permanent, and unchanging. In reality, nothing is fixed. Everything is in a state of constant flux. We live in a world of change, and yet our minds tend to hold on to things, attach to them, and believe they are permanent. This attachment to things that are not permanent is a major source of suffering. When we believe in these illusions, we create mental constructs that limit our experience of life. These constructs can come in the form of labels, judgments, and expectations. For example, if you think of yourself as a failure because you didn't meet certain goals, you are attaching to a mental image of who you are based on past experiences or ideas. But that label is just a thought, an illusion. It doesn't define you, nor does it reflect your true nature. This is where the teachings of Buddhism invite us to let go of these mental labels and see things as they really are, without attachment or judgment. One of the most powerful teachings in Buddhism is the concept of emptiness, or shunyata, which challenges the way we see ourselves in the world. Emptiness doesn't mean nothingness. Rather, it suggests that everything is interconnected and lacks inherent, fixed existence. This means that nothing has a permanent, independent identity. We are not separate from each other or from the world around us. Our minds are not separate from the world either. They are influenced by everything around us, and in turn, they influence everything we do. This understanding of emptiness helps us let go of the belief that we are separate from others or that our mind is an isolated, fixed entity. In truth, our thoughts and feelings are not permanent parts of us. They arise and pass away, just like the changing weather. Recognizing this emptiness can help us break free from the mental traps of the mind because we stop identifying so strongly with every passing thought or emotion. Let's take the example of a storm. Imagine that your mind is like the sky, and your thoughts and emotions are the clouds and storms that pass through. Sometimes, the storm is heavy, with rain and thunder, and other times it's light, with only a few fluffy clouds. No matter how intense the storm is, the sky remains unchanged. It's vast, empty, and unaffected by the storm. This is how we can learn to view our thoughts. They come and go, but they don't define us. By recognizing the impermanence of our thoughts and emotions, we can begin to see them for what they truly are, passing phenomena. But how do we begin to experience this freedom from the illusions of the mind? The first step is to become aware of them. Mindfulness, a central practice in Buddhism, is the tool that allows us to observe our thoughts, emotions, and perceptions without becoming attached to them. Through mindfulness, we can learn to recognize when our minds are caught in illusions, and with practice, we can begin to let go of these attachments. It's important to remember that this is not about suppressing or ignoring our thoughts. Instead, it's about learning to observe them with a sense of detachment. When we practice mindfulness, we stop identifying with our thoughts and feelings. We become the observer, rather than the participant. This shift in perspective is powerful because it allows us to see the illusions of the mind for what they are, fleeting and impermanent. Mindfulness also teaches us to live in the present moment. When we're fully present, we stop getting caught up in the past or the future. We stop worrying about what has already happened or what might happen. We become free to experience life as it is, without the filters and attachments that our minds constantly create. This is the essence of Buddhist practice, living with awareness, free from the illusions that bind us. The Buddha himself taught that suffering arises when we grasp onto things, when we try to hold on to the impermanent as if it were permanent. Whether it's our possessions, our identity, or even our thoughts, the more we hold on to them, the more we suffer. When we can let go of this attachment, we begin to see the world and ourselves more clearly. We begin to experience the freedom that comes from understanding the true nature of the mind. So, to break free from the trap of the mind, we must first understand that it is not the mind itself that causes us pain, but our relationship to it. The mind is like a mirror. It reflects what is in front of it, but it does not hold on to anything. We must learn to see our thoughts in the same way, as reflections that come and go. They are not us, nor are they permanent. And once we realize this, we begin to experience true freedom. By embracing this understanding, we can begin to untangle ourselves from the illusions that we've been living in. The fog clears, and we can see more clearly. We can let go of the need to control our thoughts, to hold on to the past, or to fear the future. Instead, we can learn to simply be, to observe, and to experience life as it is. This is the path to true peace and liberation. In the next part, we will explore how these illusions manifest in our daily lives and how we can begin to break free from the mental traps that hold us captive. But for now, take a moment to reflect on this. The mind is not a trap in itself. It is our attachment to it that creates the prison. By understanding the true nature of the mind and learning to see through its illusions, we can begin to live with greater freedom, peace, and joy. Roots of suffering: identifying mental traps. In our busy lives, it's easy to forget that much of the suffering we experience doesn't come from the outside world, but from the way we perceive it. Have you ever noticed how certain thoughts seem to cause you more pain than the actual events themselves? This is where the problem begins. Our minds can become like a tangled web of thoughts, fears, desires, and attachments. The root of suffering often lies in how we react to these mental states. In Buddhism, it's said that there are three primary causes of suffering, known as the three poisons: attachment, aversion, and ignorance. These poisons are deeply ingrained in our minds and shape the way we experience the world. Let's look at these more closely to understand how they trap us. Attachment is the first poison. We are constantly seeking things that we think will make us happy, be it material possessions, relationships, or achievements. We often attach ourselves to these things, believing that our happiness depends on them. The problem arises when we become so attached that we can no longer imagine life without them. If we lose what we hold dear, we feel pain and despair. This attachment is a mental trap. We fail to realize that nothing in this world is permanent. Everything changes, and clinging to these things only brings more suffering. Think about the last time you felt upset because something didn't go your way, perhaps a goal you didn't achieve or something you lost. That emotional pain came from the attachment to the outcome, the expectation of things being a certain way. We get caught in this cycle of wanting and clinging, but attachment is not limited to physical things. We also become attached to our thoughts, beliefs, and even our own identity. I am this, we think. I am successful, or I am a failure. These labels trap us in a limited view of who we are and what we can become. The second poison is aversion, our natural tendency to push away what we don't want. This could be pain, discomfort, or unpleasant situations. But by trying to avoid these things, we only create more resistance. We build walls around ourselves, thinking that if we just ignore or fight against what's unpleasant, we'll be free. But the truth is, avoidance only feeds suffering. When we resist pain, it doesn't disappear. Instead, it grows, and we become trapped by it. Think about when you're angry or frustrated. You might try to distract yourself, push the feelings away, or pretend they don't exist. But these emotions don't go anywhere. They linger, and the more you avoid them, the stronger they become. Instead of running from pain, Buddhism teaches us to face it with awareness. By acknowledging and accepting discomfort, we can begin to disarm its power over us. The third poison is ignorance, the lack of understanding about the nature of reality. In Buddhist philosophy, ignorance doesn't mean a lack of knowledge, but rather a misunderstanding of how things truly are. We see the world through a distorted lens, believing that things are permanent, or that our ego is who we truly are. This ignorance keeps us trapped in cycles of desire and fear. Consider how we often chase after external validation. We believe that if we can just get the approval of others, we'll be happy. But what happens when we don't get it? We feel worthless. This shows how deeply ignorance is embedded in our thinking. We fail to see that happiness doesn't depend on others' opinions, but on our own understanding of who we truly are. These three poisons, attachment, aversion, and ignorance, are like roots that keep our suffering alive. They lead us into mental traps that we can't easily escape from. But just as a gardener can uproot weeds, we too can begin to remove these poisons from our minds. The key is awareness and understanding. To break free from these mental traps, we need to start by recognizing them. Awareness is the first step in any form of healing. When we become aware of our attachments, our aversions, and our ignorance, we can begin to transform them. It's not about forcefully eliminating them. It's about recognizing when they arise and choosing not to be controlled by them. Start by observing your thoughts without judgment. Pay attention to when you feel attached to something or someone, when you feel repelled by something, or when you are caught in misunderstanding. Just noticing these patterns can be a powerful first step toward freedom. Awareness alone can loosen the grip of these poisons on your mind. Once we recognize these mental traps, we can begin to practice detachment, acceptance, and understanding. Detachment doesn't mean not caring about anything. It means not allowing your happiness or sense of self to depend on external conditions. Acceptance means facing difficult emotions without trying to push them away. And understanding means seeing things as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. Buddhist teachings remind us that the path to liberation is not about avoiding suffering, but about seeing through it. By recognizing the roots of our suffering, attachment, aversion, and ignorance, we can begin to see the world with clearer eyes. This awareness gives us the power to choose a different response, one that is rooted in wisdom and compassion, rather than fear and desire. The next time you feel stuck in a cycle of suffering, ask yourself, what am I attached to? What am I pushing away? What am I misunderstanding? These questions can help you see where the roots of your suffering lie, and with that awareness, you can begin to let go of the mental traps that keep you stuck. In the next part of this series, we will explore how mindfulness and meditation can help you uproot these mental poisons and free yourself from the cycle of suffering. Stay with us as we continue on the path to greater peace and freedom. Mindfulness, the gateway to freedom. Imagine, for a moment, that you are standing at the edge of a calm, clear lake. The water is still, undisturbed, reflecting the blue sky above. Then, a stone is thrown into the water. What happens? Ripples spread out, disturbing the peaceful surface. But eventually, the ripples fade, and the water becomes still again. Our minds work much the same way. The stone is like a thought or emotion that enters our mind, creating ripples of disturbance. These disturbances can be anxiety, fear, anger, or worry. We often react to them without even realizing it, causing the ripples to spread further. But just like the lake, if we learn to let the ripples fade, the mind can return to its natural state of calm. This is where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully aware and present in the moment, without judgment or distraction. It's about observing your thoughts and feelings as they arise, without getting caught up in them. Imagine sitting quietly and paying attention to your breath as it moves in and out. In that moment, you're not thinking about your past mistakes or worrying about your future plans. You're simply breathing, just as you are. In Buddhism, mindfulness is considered one of the most powerful tools for liberation. It's a way of seeing things clearly, without the distortion of attachment or aversion. We often live in a state of distraction, constantly thinking about what happened before or what might happen next. But the present moment is all we really have. Mindfulness helps us anchor ourselves in that moment, allowing us to experience life as it truly is, free from the mental clutter that often clouds our perceptions. One of the first steps in mindfulness is learning to pay attention to your breath. Breathing is something we do automatically, but when we bring our full attention to it, it becomes a powerful tool. Each inhale and exhale is a reminder that we are alive in this very moment. The breath connects us to the present, grounding us when our thoughts begin to spiral. If you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, simply focus on your breath. It's a simple yet profound practice that can bring a sense of peace to even the busiest mind. But mindfulness isn't just about breathing. It's about awareness in all aspects of life. You can practice mindfulness when you're walking, eating, talking, or even doing the dishes. The key is to be fully present in whatever you're doing. When you wash your hands, pay attention to the sensation of the water, the temperature, the way your hands move. When you eat, savor the taste of each bite, without rushing. This kind of awareness turns even the most mundane tasks into an opportunity to practice mindfulness. You might wonder, what's the point of all this mindfulness? How does it help me escape the trap of my own mind? The answer lies in understanding how our minds create suffering. Most of our suffering comes from our attachment to thoughts, emotions, and experiences. We identify with our thoughts, believing that we are our thoughts. But the truth is, we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness behind them. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to see our thoughts as they are, just thoughts. They come and go, like clouds passing through the sky. They don't define us. When we're mindful, we no longer get caught up in the cycle of overthinking, self-judgment, or regret. Instead, we can observe our thoughts with a sense of detachment, like watching leaves float on a stream. This creates a space between us and our thoughts, allowing us to choose how we respond to them. Mindfulness also helps us understand our emotions. Often, we react to our emotions without thinking. If we feel angry, we lash out. If we feel sad, we withdraw. But when we practice mindfulness, we learn to notice our emotions as they arise. We don't suppress them, but we also don't let them control us. Instead of reacting automatically, we can respond with greater clarity and compassion. Mindfulness gives us the power to choose how we engage with our emotions, rather than being slaves to them. It's important to understand that mindfulness is not about making your mind empty or still. It's about seeing your thoughts and emotions clearly without being overwhelmed by them. In fact, the mind will always have thoughts. This is natural. But when you practice mindfulness, you create a space where those thoughts don't have to control you. You can simply observe them without reacting. This creates a sense of freedom, as you are no longer trapped in the constant cycle of your thoughts. Buddhism teaches that mindfulness is the path to wisdom. Through mindfulness, we begin to see things as they truly are, without the distortion of our personal biases or attachments. We start to see that our suffering is not caused by external circumstances, but by our own minds. It's not the world that causes us pain, but our reaction to it. Mindfulness helps us break free from this cycle by allowing us to see the truth of our experience. The practice of mindfulness also leads to greater compassion. When we are aware of our own thoughts and emotions, we begin to understand others better. We see that everyone has their own struggles, their own fears, and their own pain. This understanding naturally leads to greater empathy and kindness. Mindfulness helps us connect with others on a deeper level, without judgment or expectation. One of the beautiful things about mindfulness is that it can be practiced anywhere, at any time. You don't need to sit in a quiet room or meditate for hours. You can practice mindfulness in the middle of a busy day, while driving, walking, or even talking to someone. The key is to bring your full attention to the present moment, without distraction. It's a simple practice, but it can transform the way you experience life. As you continue to practice mindfulness, you'll begin to notice subtle changes in your life. You may feel more calm and centered, even in the midst of chaos. You may find that you're less reactive, more patient, and more compassionate. These changes may be small at first, but over time, they add up. Mindfulness is a journey, not a destination. It's about being present with whatever is happening in the moment, without judgment or expectation. In the teachings of Buddhism, mindfulness is often described as the foundation of all other practices. It's the starting point for everything else. Without mindfulness, we cannot begin to understand the nature of our minds or our suffering. But with mindfulness, we can begin to untangle the knots that bind us. We can see through the illusions that keep us trapped in cycles of fear, desire, and attachment. Mindfulness is not something that happens overnight. It's a practice that requires patience, consistency, and dedication. But even small moments of mindfulness can have a profound impact on your life. It's like planting seeds of peace and wisdom in your mind. With time and care, these seeds will grow, and you will begin to experience the freedom that comes from being truly present in your life. So, the next time you find yourself caught in a mental trap, take a moment to pause. Breathe. Observe your thoughts and feelings. Don't judge them or try to push them away. Simply notice them and let them pass. With each moment of mindfulness, you are one step closer to freedom. Freedom from the mind's endless chatter, and freedom to experience life as it is, in all its beauty and simplicity. Remember, the mind is like a lake. It may get disturbed, but with mindfulness, you can return to stillness. You don't need to fight the ripples. You don't need to control the water. All you need to do is let it be, and the calm will return. This is the essence of mindfulness, the ability to be present without attachment, without judgment, and without fear. Through mindfulness, we unlock the gateway to freedom. The power of meditation, transforming the inner landscape. In our busy lives, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the constant noise and distractions that surround us. We carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, our minds cluttered with thoughts of what we need to do, what we should have done, and what we fear might happen next. It's like being caught in a storm, the wind howling and waves crashing, leaving us feeling lost and adrift. But what if I told you that there's a way to calm the storm within, to find stillness in the midst of chaos? This is where meditation comes in, and it's a practice that can transform not just our minds but our lives. Meditation is often misunderstood as a mystical or difficult practice, something reserved for monks in quiet monasteries. But in reality, it's something anyone can do, anywhere and anytime. At its core, meditation is about paying attention, about training the mind to focus on the present moment rather than being swept away by the past or future. It's about learning to observe your thoughts without judgment, to see them as they are without getting entangled in them. Imagine you're standing on the shore of a lake. The water is calm and still, a perfect reflection of the sky above. This stillness is the nature of your mind when you meditate. When you first begin, it might feel like your mind is anything but calm. Thoughts will come and go like ripples on the surface of the lake, sometimes gentle, sometimes stormy. But with practice, you learn to let these thoughts pass without grasping onto them, without letting them define your state of mind. One of the most powerful aspects of meditation is mindfulness. It's about bringing your full attention to whatever you're doing at the moment, whether it's brushing your teeth, walking down the street, or eating a meal. By doing this, you're not only training your mind to be more focused, but also learning to appreciate the simple, often overlooked moments of your life. Mindfulness helps you become aware of the present moment, which is the only place where true peace and happiness can be found. Another key element of meditation is letting go. We accumulate so much mental clutter over the years, regrets, desires, judgments, that weigh us down and keep us from experiencing true freedom. Meditation allows us to let go of this mental baggage, to release the grip we have on thoughts that no longer serve us. It's like cleaning out a cluttered room. When you clear away the old and used items, you make space for new possibilities, new ways of thinking, and new ways of being. But meditation isn't just about clearing your mind of thoughts. It's also about cultivating qualities like compassion, kindness, and acceptance. When we meditate, we start to see things from a different perspective, to recognize the interconnectedness of all beings. We understand that our suffering is not just our own. It's shared by everyone. By developing compassion, we learn to respond to our own suffering and the suffering of others with understanding and empathy. We stop reacting out of fear or anger and start acting from a place of love and kindness. One of the most profound benefits of meditation is its ability to reduce stress and anxiety. In our modern world, stress is a constant companion, a silent burden that wears us down over time. But studies have shown that regular meditation practice can lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, and increase feelings of well-being and relaxation. It's like finding an oasis in the desert. No matter how busy or chaotic your life might be, meditation provides a refuge, a place where you can connect with your true self and find peace. Meditation also helps us develop insight into the nature of our minds. We begin to see how our thoughts and emotions arise and pass away, how they influence our actions and interactions with the world. This insight allows us to break free from the patterns of thinking that cause us suffering, to see beyond the surface and recognize the underlying causes of our distress. It's like gaining a new pair of glasses that allow us to see the world in a clearer, more honest way. But perhaps the most important thing to remember about meditation is that it's not about perfection. There will be days when your mind feels restless, when thoughts keep coming and going, and it feels like you're not making any progress. And that's okay. Meditation is a practice, not a goal. It's about showing up again and again with an open heart and a willingness to learn. It's about being kind to yourself, no matter where you are on your journey. So, if you've ever felt lost in the storm of your own thoughts, if you've ever wished for a moment of stillness in the chaos of your life, consider giving meditation a try. It's a simple yet profound practice that can change the way you experience the world, that can help you find peace within yourself, and that can transform your inner landscape in ways you never thought possible. All it takes is a willingness to sit quietly, to pay attention, and to let go of everything else. The storm will still be there, but you'll find that you're no longer caught in it. You'll find a calm, a peace, a stillness that's always been within you, waiting to be discovered. The role of compassion in overcoming mental barriers. Compassion, it's one of the most powerful forces in the world, yet it is often the most overlooked when it comes to overcoming our mental struggles. We think of compassion as something we give to others, but did you know it's just as important to extend compassion to yourself? Imagine a time when you made a mistake, or you felt you were not good enough. Maybe you felt frustrated or disappointed with yourself. In those moments, What was your reaction? Were you kind to yourself? Or did you criticize yourself harshly? It's easy to get caught in self-judgment, to think that if we push ourselves harder, we'll do better. But Buddhism teaches that self-compassion is the first step toward healing and breaking free from the mental traps we set for ourselves. In the Buddhist view, compassion isn't just about being kind to others. It's about understanding the suffering we all go through as humans, including our own. We often make the mistake of seeing our suffering as something separate from everyone else's. But the truth is, we all struggle. Whether it's through sadness, fear, anger, or doubt, we share a common experience of being human. When we acknowledge that suffering is part of life and that we are not alone in our pain, compassion naturally grows. Now, let's explore how compassion can help break the mental barriers that hold us back. Our minds are constantly engaged in self-criticism and judgment. We tend to focus on what we're not doing right, what we haven't achieved, and what we're afraid of. This negative self-talk can create a huge barrier, preventing us from seeing ourselves clearly and preventing growth. Compassion helps us break through that barrier. When we start to practice compassion, we learn to embrace our imperfections instead of judging them. Rather than seeing our mistakes as failures, we can view them as opportunities to learn. Compassion isn't about ignoring our flaws, it's about accepting them without shame. When we treat ourselves with kindness and understanding, it allows us to heal and move forward with more clarity. But how do we practice compassion, especially when it feels so easy to be hard on ourselves? One powerful method is through mindful self-awareness. Buddhism teaches us that mindfulness isn't just about focusing on the present moment. It's about noticing our thoughts, feelings, and reactions without judgment. When we become aware of negative self-talk, we can replace it with compassionate thoughts. Instead of thinking, "I'm not good enough," we can say, "I'm doing my best and I'm learning." This small shift in perspective can make a huge difference in how we see ourselves and our challenges. Another way to practice compassion is through loving kindness meditation, a practice that has been a cornerstone of Buddhist teachings for centuries. In this practice, you direct loving thoughts and wishes toward yourself and others. You begin by silently repeating phrases like, "May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe, may I live with ease." This may feel strange at first, especially when we've been used to being our own harshest critic. But over time, the mind begins to soften, and compassion becomes a natural part of how we relate to ourselves. What happens when we extend compassion to ourselves? We begin to understand that our struggles don't define us. We can separate our mistakes from our identity. We stop seeing ourselves as failures and start seeing ourselves as human beings on a journey. When we are compassionate, we stop expecting perfection and instead embrace progress. The journey toward freedom from mental traps isn't about never making mistakes. It's about learning to treat ourselves with love and kindness as we grow. Compassion also allows us to heal old wounds, especially emotional ones. Many of us carry around past pain, whether it's from childhood, relationships, or experiences that shaped us. These wounds can sometimes control how we respond to the world around us. When we practice compassion, we give ourselves permission to feel the pain without judgment. We don't try to push it away or deny it. Instead, we acknowledge it with love. In doing so, we start to release the grip that the past has over us. In the Buddhist tradition, compassion is seen as a path to enlightenment because it helps us transcend our ego. We are often caught in the trap of self-centeredness, focusing on our own needs, desires, and fears. Compassion shifts the focus from me to us. It connects us with others on a deeper level. When we see the suffering in others, it opens our hearts and allows us to connect with the shared experience of being human. This connection dissolves the feeling of isolation that often keeps us trapped in our minds. The more we cultivate compassion, the more we begin to see the world through a lens of understanding. We stop viewing people and situations as threats or obstacles to our happiness. Instead, we see them as opportunities to practice kindness, patience, and acceptance. Compassion allows us to break free from the belief that we need to control everything in our lives. We learn to let go of the need for perfection and embrace the beauty of imperfection. As we continue on this path of cultivating compassion, we'll notice a shift in our relationships, both with ourselves and others. We become more forgiving, more patient, and more loving. We stop holding grudges, and we learn to let go of resentment. Compassion teaches us that everyone, including ourselves, is deserving of kindness and love, regardless of past mistakes or perceived flaws. One of the most profound lessons Buddhism offers is that the path to inner peace is not through force or control, but through love, compassion, and acceptance. When we extend compassion to ourselves and others, we begin to dismantle the mental barriers that keep us trapped in cycles of suffering. We stop seeing obstacles as things to fight against and start seeing them as opportunities to practice compassion. The role of compassion in overcoming mental barriers is clear. When we cultivate self-compassion, we free ourselves from the cycle of self-criticism and judgment. We stop being prisoners of our own minds and start living with greater peace, understanding, and love. It is through compassion that we can break the chains that keep us trapped in mental suffering and step into a life of freedom, clarity, and joy. If you want to experience this transformation, start by being kind to yourself today. Embrace your imperfections, forgive yourself for your mistakes, and acknowledge your suffering with love. Compassion is the key that can unlock the door to a free and peaceful mind. The middle way, balancing thoughts and emotions. In our journey of life, we often find ourselves swaying between extremes. One moment, we feel overwhelmed by our emotions, completely caught up in our thoughts. The next, we may try to shut them all down, thinking that if we can just ignore or suppress our feelings, we will find peace. But, as many of us have learned, this never truly works. We can't ignore our feelings forever, nor can we keep riding the waves of intense emotion without eventually crashing. This is where the Buddhist concept of the middle way comes into play, a path of balance that avoids the extremes of indulgence and denial. But what exactly does this mean for us in our everyday lives? And how can we apply it to our thoughts and emotions? The middle way is about finding a space between the pull of extremes. It's the place where we can acknowledge our emotions without being controlled by them. It's where we can experience our thoughts without getting lost in them, rather than swinging from one side to the other, either holding on too tightly to our desires or pushing everything away. We find a calm center, a balance where peace can flourish. Think about your daily life for a moment. How often do you swing between the extremes of craving and aversion? One day, you're filled with excitement, wanting everything and everyone to go exactly your way. The next, you feel frustrated and upset, wishing you could escape from your situation. This is a natural part of being human, but the middle way offers a different approach, a balanced way of seeing, feeling, and living. Let's start with understanding the extremes. On one side, we have indulgence, the constant seeking of pleasure, the chasing after more, thinking that happiness lies in external things. This might be the desire to always get what we want, to always feel good, to keep seeking pleasure. Whether it's material possessions, achievements, or approval from others, we often think that if we can just get enough, we'll be happy. But what happens when we reach that goal? We might find that the happiness we thought we'd achieve is short-lived, and soon, we're on to the next desire, chasing something else. This cycle of craving can never bring lasting peace. When we're constantly chasing after something, we forget to appreciate what we have right now. Our minds become restless, always reaching for more and more, never fully content. We end up stuck in an endless loop of wanting and wanting, but never truly experiencing fulfillment. On the other extreme, we have aversion, pushing away what we don't want, avoiding discomfort, and trying to escape feelings that make us uncomfortable. When we feel sadness, frustration, or anger, our instinct is often to suppress it, to distract ourselves from it, or to avoid it altogether. But by pushing these emotions down, we don't free ourselves from them. Instead, we trap them inside, and they often come back even stronger later. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. No matter how hard you try, it slips through your fingers. The middle way, however, invites us to sit with our feelings without clinging to them or rejecting them. It's about recognizing that our thoughts and emotions are transient. They come and go like clouds in the sky. Just as we don't hold on to the clouds forever, we don't need to hold on to our thoughts or feelings. We can acknowledge them, let them be, and allow them to pass naturally. This doesn't mean we suppress or ignore our emotions. Rather, we experience them fully without letting them control us. The key to the middle way is awareness. By being fully present in the moment, we can observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming attached to them. This takes practice, but over time, it becomes easier to notice when we're veering toward one extreme or the other. When we feel ourselves pulled into the grip of desire or frustration, we can pause, take a deep breath, and return to the center. Instead of reacting automatically, we respond with calm awareness. Let's take an example. Imagine you've had a long, tiring day, and you're feeling frustrated. Perhaps you're angry at someone, or you're upset about something that didn't go as planned. In this moment, you have two choices. You can either indulge in that frustration, letting it control you and letting it spiral into further anger or resentment, or you can push it away, pretending it doesn't exist and trying to bury it. But both of these options will only create more stress in the long run. The middle way is to recognize the frustration, acknowledge it without judgment, and allow it to pass without clinging to it. In Buddhist teachings, the middle way doesn't just apply to our emotions. It's a broader philosophy that touches every part of our lives, from how we relate to others to how we interact with our environment. It encourages us to find balance in all things. For instance, in our relationships, we can avoid the extremes of over-attachment and detachment. We don't need to cling too tightly to others, nor do we need to shut ourselves off emotionally. We can love and care for others with openness, without fear of losing ourselves or becoming too dependent. Similarly, the middle way teaches us how to live in harmony with the world around us. We don't need to accumulate endless possessions or chase after fleeting pleasures, but we also don't need to reject the world entirely. We can engage with life, enjoying the beauty it offers, while remaining grounded and mindful of our true needs. But how do we put this into practice in our daily lives? The first step is to recognize when we're falling into one of the extremes, either grasping or pushing away. Mindfulness is key here. When we notice ourselves becoming overwhelmed with desire or frustration, we can pause, breathe, and check in with ourselves. Are we reacting out of craving or aversion? By simply becoming aware, we can begin to make more balanced choices. Another helpful practice is cultivating equanimity, the ability to remain calm and composed in the face of both pleasure and pain. Equanimity allows us to enjoy life's pleasures without getting attached to them and to endure life's difficulties without being overwhelmed. It's the ability to remain centered, regardless of external circumstances. As we learn to walk the middle way, we also develop a sense of inner freedom. We no longer feel enslaved by our desires or our fears. We're no longer at the mercy of our emotions or our thoughts. Instead, we become more like a still pond, able to reflect life as it is, without distortion. We can face challenges with greater clarity and resilience, knowing that nothing lasts forever, neither our pleasure nor our pain. All things, good and bad, come and go. When we can accept this truth, we find peace.